Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Day 2, Session 2 of Cycle 2015. We're here with Doug Casey, the original international man, world-famous globetrotter, investor, speculator, guru of various sorts. But what we're here to talk about today is internationalization, because there is no one on this planet who knows more about it and who has more experience with it than Doug Casey. Doug, take it away.
Okay, thanks, Lobo. I don't know how it developed this way, but over the years, I've traveled to over 145 countries. I actually counted them recently to have an accurate count. And I've lived in 10. And so what can I tell you about that? What's the good of that? What have I learned? Well, I think one thing you have to remember today is that the world's economic and financial situation now is more unstable, in my opinion, than it's been for decades, maybe for centuries, for that matter. I think we're on the edge of a giant precipice. So the economic and financial world is very dangerous. And there are certain ways that you can overcome that danger and even profit from it. But more important than diversification among some intelligent assets, economically, financially, is that you've got to diversify yourself politically, because your main danger in the world today is not the markets, it's governments. And the very idea of government itself is repugnant to a free person. As Mao said very famously, the power of the state comes out of the barrel of a gun. And there are essentially two types of people in the world. People that believe in dealing with others on a voluntary basis, and people that have no problem with coercing other people. Now, you don't get the best and brightest that go into government. You get the poorest and worst type of people. Why? Because they're the kind of people that believe in coercion and institutionalize it in the state. And what I'm here to tell you is that the state, coercive government, serves no useful purpose. People have been programmed to believe that the government is we the people, and it operates for the best interests of all of us. But as far as I'm concerned, that's a lie. I'm speaking to you right now from Argentina, northwest Argentina, a little wine town of 10,000 people. And just 2 days ago, the government here in Argentina changed. Since the early 1950s, when this country was ruled by first Juan Perón and indirectly by his wife, Evita, that they made the famous movie about, the state has insinuated its tentacles into every area of Argentine life. And the standard of living in Argentina has gone down for 3 generations now, over 60 years. So finally, in this election of a couple of days ago, maybe there's a sea change. Maybe as stupid and corrupt as the average voter is, thinking that he can get something for nothing, and thinking that the state is a magic cornucopia that can give you free medical care, free education, free housing, free food, free everything. Meanwhile, the standard of living has been going down because productive people don't want to work. They don't have the capital to build things because it's taken away from them in taxes. The destruction of the currency makes it impossible for the average person to save money, so he goes further downhill. Against all odds, in my opinion, they elected somebody that appears on the face to be a decent human being and at least has a basic understanding of economics. Now, why do I say this, and how does it relate to the theme of what I'm supposed to talk about, which is internationalizing yourself? I came here to Argentina on a serious basis about 8 years ago because I figured that a place that's been going down for so long, but as a lot of things that are unique and good would eventually turn the corner. So I put a lot of money in this country. How many figures? 9 figures? 10 figures of US dollars. And a lot of people thought I was crazy for doing that. In fact, sometimes I still think I'm crazy for having made such a big bet in just one country. But because under the recent government, that of the Kirchners, especially Christina Kirchner, who is now out of office, everything in Argentina that wasn't price supported was price controlled, and everything was highly regulated, and the markets were totally distorted. This country was getting so bad that about 3 years ago, Argentina had to import milk. This is incredible. Argentina, the country that built itself on cattle herds, had to import milk. So that's how bad it was getting. So it was a close election, notwithstanding that. And by the presumable good guy won by 52 to 48. We'll see how it works out, because once you get in office, of course, you're operating against the deep state, all these people that have a vested interest and so forth. But maybe this new guy, Macri, will be radical. And by radical, I mean go to the roots of freedom, and he'll abolish all these agencies and fire all these employees that do nothing but pick up their paychecks. They're called, here in Argentina, they're called gnocchis, which is like a little fat dough dumpling that just sits there and doesn't do anything. They call them gnocchis. Everybody knows they exist. They'll have to go out and do something productive. I mean, the country could boom. Like I have a cattle herd here, about 1,500 cows. I got about 200 dairy cows in addition. They sell for about half of the world market price. As the new government gets rid of controls in order to encourage production, they'll rise to the market value. So my cows will go in value from about $600 a piece to about $1,200 a piece. So I'll have been smart. And now I have to find the next country to do that, although I like Argentina a lot. Here's the point I'm trying to make to you people. It's that if you just stay in the country where you are, because that's where your family is, and your boyfriend or girlfriend is, and the language that you know is spoken and the culture you understand is prevalent, you're basically no better than a medieval serf. You're acting like a plant. And for a human, acting like a plant rooted to one place isn't a good survival strategy. So most of you guys are in your teens or 20s, or early 30s, I suppose. And my advice to you is to put enough capital together to buy perhaps an around-the-world ticket with as many stops as you can get on that ticket, and enough capital that living cheaply out of a backpack, staying in students' hostels, you spend a year traveling around the world. It's a far better education than going to a university. Incidentally, I urge all of you to stop misallocating the time and money it takes to go to a university. You'll find that most of your professors, well, certainly here in the United States and Canada, it's true, they're all hard-boiled socialists, cultural Marxists, have no experience in the real world. They try to insinuate corrupting ideas into their students. It's a complete misallocation, in my view, of 4 years of your time and the money that not only you spend doing that, listening to these fools, but the 4 years that you could spend actually building capital, doing something productive in the world. So buy that around the world ticket. Stop in as many places that are different as you can. Meet as many people as you can. How do you do that? Well, one thing I've always done when I got into a new city, when I was still doing this type of thing, I don't have to anymore, is I would open the yellow pages. They still had yellow pages in those days. Well, it's the same thing on the computer, of course. And I would call up lawyers and real estate agents when I come into a new city. And the reason I do that is because, number one, lawyers and real estate agents have money. Number two, they're centers of influence. Number three, they'll talk to anybody because you might be a source of business. After all, if you come from more than 50 miles away, you might be the next Bill Gates or somebody like that. So I'd sit down and talk to these guys about various things, and I'd probe them on the way they viewed the world, talk to them about opportunities, indicate that perhaps I have capital, which was true incidentally, and even in those days, or I had access to it, and was looking for opportunities. And a lot of the time, if the two of us got along, they'd invite me home to dinner, they'd invite me to a party, introduce me to their friends, one thing leads to another, and within a week I knew everybody in the damn country. Even today, I can go, well, not even today, it's much easier for me to do this today. I promise you I can go to any country in Africa, for instance, and within a week be sitting down with the president of the country, pitching him on a deal. Instantly, the deal that I always like to pitch them on is a radical plan that I've developed over the years to do three things. I always tell them I believe I can do three things for you, Mr. President. And I prefer to talk to military dictators when possible. I say, number one, I can make you legitimately very wealthy because people can't steal the way Mobutu and Mugabe and Marcos and people like that used to. It's harder today. Number two, that gets their attention. They all want to steal. Number two, I can put you on the front cover of every magazine in the world in a favorable light for the next decade. Right now, they're either looked upon as being criminals or nobody knows they exist. So they want to hear about that. And number three, I tell them, I can have the people of this country view you as a new George Washington. Everybody will love you. Now that beats a 45 to the back of the head. So I always get a hearing, and I tell them what my plan is, which I won't bore you with now. And I've had some very interesting adventures in a dozen countries around the world where I pitched it. I don't think I'll ever go anywhere with this, but I've had some real fun pitching it. And who knows? The Africans and other people in third world countries have bought every stupid idea that has come down the pike from Europe over the last 100 years. Why shouldn't they buy from me? Anyway, you can do that. If not right now, maybe 5 or 10 years from now. But you've got to travel. I really believe that traveling is by far the best education that you can get, both from an academic point of view and from a practical point of view. But in order to travel, you need to build some capital up. So how to do that? Well, I don't advise you look for a job, either in your home country or in a foreign country. Because then you're just trading hours of your life for pennies, and I think that's foolish. Rather, what you have to think of is that everybody on this planet has an infinite demand for goods and services. I mean, if you have one car, you want two. If you have two, you want three. One house, you want two. Two houses, you want three. Everybody wants this private maid. There's an infinite demand for goods and services on the part of everybody. So what you have to do is figure out what good or service you can provide to the market in general, or a person in particular, that will give you the reward that you want. So that's the mindset that you need to be thinking of, not going out and asking somebody for a job. I mean, it's crazy thought. So it's easier for you to do that if you get out of your home country. And there's a reason I say that too. You stay in your home country, you're like tens of thousands of other people in your position. So you're a commodity. You're really there's not much to distinguish you from your countrymen. But if you go across the world to the other side of the planet, you're going to have experiences and so forth that are unique on the other side of the planet, but are dime a dozen in your home country. So there's every reason why you should take the risk and travel. A question came along. I think there were two questions. I didn't see the first one. It was long. The second question is, well, what about introverts? Well, look, it's not good being an introvert if you want to make money. I'll tell you why. Because if you want to gain understanding with other people and get them to do things that you'd like them to do, you have to have three things. You've got to have affinity. In other words, you've got to like each other. And you don't know if you're going to like each other if you're an introvert that's sitting in the back of your computer all day. You've got to share reality. In other words, not just like each other, but you've got to see the world the same way in addition. And the third thing, the reason the way you find that out is by communication. But introverts don't communicate very well. So if you're an introvert right now, the odds are tilted against you. You can do it, but it's a lot easier if you go out and meet and communicate with other people, preferably in person. So I think that you, if you're an introvert, you ought to think about changing your approach to these things. If you're an introvert, of course, the computer is a wonderful thing for you. So you have much more opportunity than you did a couple of decades ago before the computer was important. Or you can be a writer if you have something important to say. But unfortunately, I've got to tell you that while the internet has made it much easier to be a writer, a generation ago, there were only 50,000 new books published every year. That was a lot. Now there's 1.5 million new books published every year, plus zillions of blogs. So it's a very competitive space. Okay, getting back to answer the question, best thing to do is change your own personality. You can't change the world, but you can change yourself. So being an introvert is not good. And it's hard to be an international man if you're an introvert. So, I don't know where I should go from here. Lobo, do you have any thoughts? What should I cover that I'm not covering?
Well, those are good thoughts already. The previous question was related to the introvert question, and it's daunting, but let's not beat around the bush here. Are you saying that if somebody just by their deep-seated personality is an introvert, that they're SOL, that the best strategy available is not available to them? Or can an introvert just choose to be an extrovert? It seems like a bit of a tall order there, Doug.
Well, look, I'm of the opinion that you can, or certainly should, control your own reality, and you should be able to transform yourself to a great degree. You can't transform others. I mean, I think it's wrong, A, to try that, and B, it's impossible. But you can transform yourself. If you're an introvert, the odds are stacked against you. Sure, you can make it. Of course you can make it. I mean, Bill Gates is probably an introvert. But lucky with a unique skill. But you can't count on getting lucky or having a skill that's that unique. So yeah, you ought to change yourself. Look, if you're a 97-pound weakling, you can transform yourself into a Charles Atlas type. It can be done. So you can do that physically. If you have no knowledge, you can gain the knowledge. That'll give you the confidence that you need to be an extrovert. So you can do that. You can do it physically, you can do it intellectually, and I think you can do it psychologically. So in my book, for the purposes of what I'm talking about, and a lot of my friends are introverts, nothing morally wrong with being an introvert, but you got to break out of your shell. It's not a good survival. It's not a good survival strategy, and it's not a good strategy for becoming wealthy.
That's an interesting point. And actually, I have taken a Myers-Briggs test and other things, and I am repeatedly classified as an introvert. And this often surprises people because they see me on stage or out traveling doing what I do or speaking in public, and they think I'm an extrovert. But actually, this costs me energy to do, and I need rest afterwards. Anyway,
I've got to ask you.
Sure.
On the Myers-Briggs, and I don't know how many people in the audience are familiar with it, but I remember I took it, and I do remember what I was. I was an INTJ. Is that what you were?
Exactly what I was, INTJ.
I think most libertarians are, actually. So it means we're both introverts, actually. And I like my own company, as you like your own company, but it takes a little bit of effort to get out there. So
certainly do.
I've done it. You've done it.
We had another question. We had a different question here regarding the medical marijuana trend going on around the world. As an international man, do you see this as a global trend that can be profited from or participated in? What's your level of interest in that?
Well, idiotically, I've invested too much into two private, in other words, not publicly traded medical marijuana deals, one recreational, one medical. And I'm afraid that that space is a little bit too popular, and I'm glad that marijuana is becoming legal in many places in the world. But, you know, it's still cheaper to grow your own pot the way hippies did back in the 60s is to buy a heavily taxed and regulated commodity. So I don't know. I don't know enough about it. I'm all for not just the legalization of marijuana, but the legalization of coke, heroin, whatever you want. These things all used to be legal. They should be legal. It's a question of being a free man. But I don't have the expertise to say how to profit from it. In fact, I'll probably lose the money that I have in these two private companies. Yeah, more.
Okay, we have an erudite question for you here from Evaldas in Lithuania. He says that Aristotle distinguished between three types of rule: monarchy, aristocracy, and democracy. He said if those were your only choices, which one would you pick?
Well, they're not our only three choices, and I don't like any of them. I mean, monarchy or ruled by one person who, if he's not a psychopath, when he starts ruling, will turn into one, as the power corrupts him. So
funny that
everybody says a benevolent dictator would be wonderful, and I suppose it would be. If I was the dictator, everything would be wonderful, I'm sure. An aristocracy comes from the word aristos, which means the best. But they're not. They're usually just the aristocrats are usually just, you know, the genetically degraded people that won the Lucky Sperm Club. So I don't believe in aristocracy, and I don't believe in democracy, which is nothing but mob rule, usually dressed up in a coat and tie. So I'm an anarchist. I don't believe that you need political rule at all. Anarchy is the gentlest and kindest type of ordering of society because there's no institutionalized coercion in the form of the state. When you walk out on the street, that's an anarchy. You don't need that cop to make you pay your bill in a restaurant. You pay your bill because that's, unless you're a criminal sociopath, that's what people do. So the state serves no useful purpose, and therefore forget about monarchy and aristocracy and democracy. They should all be flushed. I'd like to think that humans have advanced beyond the stage, that they think about themselves as needing to either rule other people or be ruled by some other people. So forget about it. Just get that out of your mind. It's criminal think.
Smash the wheel. Very good. You're singing my song there, actually, from what I talked about in my talk. We have another question back on the business front, and the question is, which countries do you think have the best entrepreneurial opportunities or environment today?
Well, a couple generations ago, unquestionably, the U.S. would have been the best place for anybody with limited capital and entrepreneurial moxie to go. But the U.S. keeps falling further and further behind every year. Where to go? Where would I go today? Unfortunately, every country in the world, and I think I'm right in saying every country in the world, is going in the wrong direction. Well, of course, there are anomalies. Argentina itself, where I am right now, may have turned a serious corner just 2 days ago. So anything can happen. But especially with the problems with the Muslim world and so forth, there are more restrictions, more regulations. All these governments everywhere in the world are bankrupt. So you can count on more taxes and more inflation. So where should you go? Actually, you shouldn't go anywhere and turn from a plant where you are now in Belarus or Lithuania or wherever it is, to become a plant in some new country. I mean, that doesn't make any sense. What you need to do is ideally adopt a four flags theory. Be a citizen of one country. I don't believe in citizenship, but in today's world, increasingly you need a passport. I mean, I used to travel on a World Service Authority document, used it successfully in half a dozen countries, unsuccessfully in others. But it was just a document that looked like a passport. It was fine. Can't do that anymore. So you need to be a citizen, unfortunately. But your citizenship should be in one country, your bank account in a second country, your business dealings in a third country, and your residency in a fourth country. That internationalizes you and keeps the criminals, and they basically, like I said, the native criminal class of every country is in the government. Even if they seem like nice guys, they're not, because government draws the worst kind of people, as I said earlier. So you're not on anybody's radar screen. They don't see you as their possession if you're diversified that way among at least 4 different countries. So that's the answer to the question. Is there any one country right now where I think opportunity is really great? You know, it's a special situation kind of. Here's what I would do if I were you guys. After you get a little bit of experience, I'd go to Africa. There's chaos in Africa. There's going to be chaos in Africa for a long time. But by being white Europeans, you're unusual. You stand out. That's a good thing. You'll have lots more opportunities, and either in your native country or those local Africans will have. It's rough and tumble. I'd go to Africa.
We actually have a fair number of Africans in the audience too. What would you suggest to them?
Well, if they're Africans, I'd get the hell out of Africa.
Any comments on Taiwan, Thailand, parts of the Asian Rim?
Well, here I am in Argentina, which I really like, and hopefully, since this election is going to boom, this place could really boom now, finally. So people will stop looking at me as being a fool for putting all this money here and think I'm a genius. It's just the wheel's cyclical and it turns. But I almost wound up in Thailand, because Thailand is unique in Asia. It's about the only country in Asia that's never been conquered by the colonialists. It's got a very gentle and fun culture. I like Thailand. So as your first stop in Asia, go to Thailand. Taiwan. I don't know how that's going to work out with the People's Republic of China and what's going on in the Spratly Islands, because and so forth. The Taiwanese are involved in this. I don't know. No real opinion. It's one of the wealthiest countries in the world.
Okay, how about building a nest egg to finance this travel, passive income strategies for people starting out? Is there something young people can do to generate income that doesn't involve flipping hamburgers, or is that only something for rich old investors?
Well, the answer to the question is what I said before. Stop thinking in terms of getting a job. Start thinking in terms of the fact that everybody on the planet wants everything, and you just have to figure out how to provide it. I mean, I'd go through the Yellow Pages equivalent if you have no money and you can't get out of town, and go through every business in the town where you live. If your town's too small, forget about it. Go to a city, first of all. Go to the biggest city around. Go through the Yellow Pages and look at all the businesses. Go through the Yellow Pages a dozen times and think about every business. Because I promise you, every business owner that's listed in that Yellow Pages has problems that he wants solved. So it's up to you to figure out how to solve them. And charge him a percentage of the increase of his business or increase of his profits. Instead of getting a couple dollars an hour or whatever he wants to, tell him, I'll take 50% of the increase. And he says, okay, I'll give you 40%. Okay, that's fine. So that's what you should be doing. That's what you should be doing, okay? And you're going to be much better suited and able to do that in a country, in a place where it's relatively primitive. That's why I say Africa is the place where you should go. Than in a place that's advanced where there's thousands of other people just like you. And you Africans in the audience should turn that on its head. You've undoubtedly got connections and skills and abilities that these Europeans don't have. So, you know, it flows both ways.
Okay, very good. Different sort of question. Somebody is wondering if the sort of Occupy type movement philosophy or synergy could be applied in a libertarian way, sort of a new state, a free state project type thinking. You know, would it help if a bunch of libertarians all moved to Argentina? Or what do you think about trying to organize a behavior to try to free up someplace somewhere on Earth?
I like the idea, and of course, my hobby, talking to heads of state in backward countries, is very much related to that. Trying to, you know, get them to change their, you know, dog shit country into a libertarian haven. So I think it's wonderful, like this project in between, what is it, between Serbia and Croatia, I guess, Liberland. So I met with those guys. I don't know if they're going to go anywhere or not, but it's a great idea. But, you know, the problem is this. I used to think that if everybody in the world was a libertarian, then the world would be like heaven on earth. But I'll tell you what I've found. The world would be a vastly better place. It'd be 100 times better if everybody on the planet was essentially libertarian. Here's the problem. You can intellectually hold libertarian ideas, but you can, even when you do that, you can be lazy and you can have all kinds of character flaws, because libertarian ideals are an intellectual set. And just because you hold intellectual ideals doesn't mean that you're even a decent human being. I mean, so I'll tend to give libertarians the benefit of the doubt, but not that much doubt, because they suffer from the same psychological aberrations in every other area of the mind as other people do. So, yeah, I'm all for it, but it's not going to give us heaven on earth. I'm sorry.
Not an option. Well, it's an interesting question. If you had a libertarian population and you applied the standard 80-20 rule, what would the 4% of sociopaths, of libertarian sociopaths, be like?
They're not going to be as bad as the 4% of communist sociopaths, I can tell you that. But, you know, they're still going to have serious fatal flaws. They're going to have psychological aberrations from other areas of their mind that are going to impinge on their dealings with other people. I mean, It's like some Christians say, oh, if everybody believed in Jesus, it would be heaven on earth. No, that's not true. As you know, I mean, there are just as many Christian criminals and sociopaths and everything else as there are communists. So no, just having the intellectual framework that libertarianism gives you, it's a huge help, but I'm afraid it's not a panacea. At least I don't think so. Although I'd like for everybody to have it, step in the right direction.
Let's step off that last thought for a minute. You say having that intellectual framework, the freedom philosophy, and those values in your mind is a huge help. Do you really regard that as a help? I know many libertarians who feel like it's a hindrance. Well, I'd be better off if my principles didn't get in the way and prevent me from having a better job or whatever. I've heard it used as an excuse, a crutch, a reason for failure many times. You don't find that in your life,
yeah,
and why?
No, I understand. Look, during the northern summer, I live in Aspen, Colorado. That place is chock-a-block with rich people, but they're mostly a lot of them are rich criminals, quite frankly, and I don't get invited to any of the cocktail parties, of which there are a score every night in Aspen. Why? Because I'm a libertarian, and I'm always the skeleton at the feast. In other words, I can do 2 minutes on the weather. I'll do another 2 minutes on sports. I'll do another 2 minutes on the state of the roads. Now what are we going to talk about? Well, I like to talk about ideas, philosophy. Oh, and everybody says, oh, ideas, philosophy, that's wonderful. But the problem is that practical and applied philosophy boils down to two things, religion and politics. And those are exactly the two things you're never supposed to talk about at a party. So I do, and people get offended, and I don't give a damn. I mean, I don't need them. But sure, so I understand this is what happens to libertarians. Look, but I'm the way I am, and who knows, if I'd kept my mouth shut, I might be richer and happier, but I don't think so. So that's a bullshit excuse.
I think most people would be quite satisfied to be as rich and happy as you are right now. We have another question. Somebody asked, if a random person on the street, what makes them stand out to someone like you? You've been everywhere, you've seen everything, you've met all kinds of people, jumped out of airplanes, crashed cars, smashed yourself with polo punnies, you've done all this stuff around the world. How would a young person connect with someone with your experience and background?
Well, it's not just me, but I think anybody that has any sense is always looking to meet new people of quality. So when somebody sends me an email, I always answer it and ask them to tell me what they want to talk about and why I should talk to them. But I'll give anybody the benefit of the doubt, and so will anybody else. Because for all I know, the person that gets in touch with me might be the next Bill Gates or the next Steve Jobs or something like that. So this isn't a problem unless you're an introvert and you're afraid to reach out. So, and listen, if whoever it is that you reach out to doesn't want to reach back to you, to hell with them. I mean, they've got their own problems. You don't need to deal with them.
That's true enough, and I'll jump in and say to the audience that I have seen this in Doug, and we go to conferences, and there are a lot of people there that, he's the famous investor guru, and they rush up around him, and instead of brushing them off or saying I'm too busy or whatever, Doug will talk to anybody. He's pretty easygoing and he's approachable until you say something really stupid. Then he has no patience for you. But anybody can talk to Doug. You get a chance. Yeah, I mean, one shot at least.
That's correct. And as a general rule, I've got to say, I dislike humanity at large. I see them as chimpanzees out there, not worthy of any time or attention or sympathy. On the other hand, I'm very interested in individuals, at least until that individual proves himself to be a liability or an idiot or having severe character flaws in which I consign them to the outer darkness. But I'm happy to talk to anybody. Happy to, actually, because they might bring something good to my life. And if they don't, well, they can bring whatever they got to somebody else's life. No harm done.
All right, we have a question. I guess somebody asked if you made any progress with your pet project there with Onar Am. I don't know who that is, but I guess he's a president somewhere in Africa. Did you talk to him, and how did that go?
Onar got in touch with me. He's a Norwegian guy who somehow hooked up with a guy in Mauritania who's libertarian-oriented. And Onar is a very smart, sound, ideologically sound libertarian. So we flew to, he invited me to come along. He knew it was my hobby. We flew to Mauritania, the Islamic Republic of, and I spent 10 days there with him. Met lots of government officials, socialized with lots of young Mauritanians. And it was very interesting altogether. I'm glad I did it, because I'll remember those 10 days in Mauritania. And if I'd spent the 10 days wherever the hell else I was, I wouldn't remember them. They'd just be 10 days of a blur. Another good reason to travel. But is it going to go anywhere? No, because we didn't meet anybody in the country that had any initiative or get up and go. I mean, they were all looking for, I mean, I told them I would be willing to back a Mauritanian version of Shark Tank, if you all know what Shark Tank is. It's where you get 5 rich guys, and then guys with ideas present the ideas, and then they will back the idea for a certain percentage and so forth. You know, I told them, okay, I'll back that if you can organize the thing. They're too goddamn incompetent to even organize that. Not that they were stupid. They weren't stupid. They were just, you know, and there were other things. So, you know, yeah, I'll do that. But the answer is nothing happened. It was a non-starter. Fine, right. Non-starter.
Chalk another one up to experience. So we have a question here from a well-informed member of the audience. Wants an update on your novel series, and when does the first book come out, and what's the status there?
Oh, thank you for asking. This is a series of 6 books that trace our hero from age 23 up until later in life, where he engages sequentially in 6 highly politically incorrect but unjustly besmirched occupations. The first is he's a speculator, and then he becomes a drug lord, and then he becomes an assassin, then he becomes a terrorist, then he becomes a warlord, and then he becomes, it turns out, the Antichrist. But it turns out that he's a very good guy. He's a great libertarian, good guy generally, and we're just showing how these are not bad occupations. He improves the world as he engages in all of them. And I have a lot of theories on all these things. Okay, that's for those of you who didn't know. The first book, Speculator, is done. It's in the hands of an agent. The second book, Drug Lord, is half done. And I can finish it mucho pronto, as soon as I get a contract from a publisher. But I'll finish it anyway, and then I'll go on to Assassin and the rest of it, just because it's intellectually amusing. And for all I know, it might turn out to be the next Harry Potter. Well, in my dreams.
That would be quite phenomenal. There's an interesting phenomenon here. I don't have another question lined up. Well, no, I do have one coming up. But just looking at the chat that's happening at Liberty.me as we're talking, and you said how you give 2 minutes to the weather, the roads, and so on, and then you don't get invited back because you want to talk about philosophy and so on. A lot of people are chiming in on the conversation. Oh, you can come to my parties. That's all I want to talk about is philosophy and ideas and things. And it strikes me that you know, this is actually an example in practice, in demonstration of the value of a voluntary community like Liberty.me, places where people of like mind who would almost never run into each other on the streets walking around the world can in fact run into each other and create a community and share and exchange in this way just as you and I are doing right now. So, little plug for our sponsors there at Liberty.me. I think I want to encourage everybody who tunes into this to join Liberty.me. You get a free pass here as part of Cycle, and I hope you make use of it, because there's a lot of value there beyond what we'll provide just during this week here at Cycle. Okay, next question is.
I'm sure you mentioned also, Lobo, that we have a lot of good free stuff at kcresearch.com, and they can go there as well.
Fair enough. Yes, they can look up free stuff there too, including our past conversations. The question is, do you think there's a country anywhere in the world right now that has a chance of being the next USA? Where is going to be the next land of the free? Do you see that happening somewhere in Asia, South America, or anywhere at all?
No, I don't. On the other hand, as technology advances, technology is the best friend of the average man. It liberates him from the state. I mean, gunpowder liberated the average man from armed thugs called knights in those days. And, you know, the telephone made it possible to communicate. The jet plane. Technology is wonderful. So I don't know if there's any geographical area on this planet that's ripe for more freedom. The U.S. was a unique idea, and it had the right cultural background, and you know, it was right in a lot of ways. But now it's degraded, and it's just like any of the other 200 nation states that cover the face of the earth like a skin disease. So I wouldn't look on it geographically. I'd count on technology to work to liberate the world. In other words, let me say this. When I was in my 20s, there weren't any libertarians around. I mean, I think I knew about 5, and I looked everywhere. But now there are thousands. So, you know, that's quite, and a lot of it's because of this technology. So I think that's the answer, not a piece of geography.
That's actually a natural plug for another one of our sponsors, and that would be Students for Liberty. Alex McCobin, affectionately known in this part of the world as Sasha McCobin. He helped us a lot to get the word out about this event. And for all the students out there, I mean, if you ever feel alone, the only one of your kind on your campus in your world, I mean, there is nothing better for you than Students for Liberty. We encourage all students to join that, even if you have company and you're not alone. The more the merrier. It's not just about strength in numbers and the fun and fuzzy warm feelings of having friends and like minds. It's also networking opportunities. There's a new Alumni for Liberty branch now shaping up. And Alex has, I think, over 130,000 members now in Students for Liberty. So you're not just looking at some friends. You're looking at a very large pool, a significant pool, actually, of really bright, motivated people who share deep values with you. This is an enormous asset. Somebody was asking earlier about how to accumulate that nest egg. Well, I think you could probably get together with a dozen random people from Students from Liberty or Liberty.me and come up with a plan. And you could probably get together with another dozen people and come up with the same thing. So
yeah, but Lobo, I've got some better advice, and that is don't be a student in one of these cesspools called universities today. Go out into the real world. You're not going to learn very much from other people that are your age and your background. You're only going to learn stuff from people that are older than you, that have done a lot more, that have more money than you do. You're not going to find those in a university. And everybody's got a university degree, and it means just about zero today. So stop wasting your time. And all the members of Students for Liberty, if McCobin wanted to do them a favor, he'd tell them to resign their...
Well, that's classic, Casey, but even you have admitted that if you have your heart set on becoming a doctor or an engineer or one of these things where, A, there's not just opinion, but an actual body of knowledge that you need to acquire, and B, unfortunately, in the world we live in, a license that you need to acquire, that going through those hoops can be worthwhile. You still
those are exceptions, Bobo, you're quite correct. But only a very, very small percentage of students actually take hard sciences or mathematics or engineering or medicine. Most of them today take courses that are rife with gender studies and nonsense. So
understand. Okay, we got a question about cryptography and privacy on the modern world. On the one hand, cryptography is a tremendously empowering anti-state technology. On the other hand, you know, these new IT technologies are sort of creating the possibility for Big Brother that was only imaginary in 1948. Where do you come down on this?
Well, look, it's very much like the invention of gunpowder. It turned out to be a tremendous liberator for the average guy, but at the same time, the state tried to keep it out of the average guy's hands and used the gunpowder to suppress the average guy. So it's exactly analogous. Encryption technology is like gunpowder 500 years ago, and it's used the same way. But it's going to be a good thing, and from that point of view, the good guys are going to win. One reason for that is that in the military, the advantage always goes to the attacker for a lot of reasons. And the little guy that's developing these things, you know, with disseminated, thousands of millions of computers all working on, and the state has this power, but they're big and dumb and bureaucratic and stupid. So don't worry about it.
Very good. Actually, I'm remembering now we had one question before the session started, and that was, you travel a lot and you extol the virtues of internationalizing your lifestyle, your assets, your ass, everything. But are you never afraid when you travel? What about the terrorist attacks in Paris and there's Brussels is on lockdown, and in Nigeria you've got Boko Haram, and there's a bombing in somewhere in, I forget the latest one, but just all over the world you've got all these terrible things happening. Are you not afraid of running into this trouble?
No, that's ridiculous. This is hysteria. This is hysteria. These are the fears that people that have that medieval mindset that are afraid that if they go more than 5 miles from their village and stay overnight, they'll be eaten by a dragon. I mean, it's exactly the same mindset. And
well, Doug Casey, can you prove that there are no dragons over that hill?
No, but let me say this. It's that when I want to take a trip, an optional trip, I prefer to go to some place that the United States State Department has a travel advisory on, because there are a lot of advantages. There are no tourist crowds, and I hate tourist crowds. The restaurants are empty. The service is good. The hotels are going to have specials because there's nobody staying there. And if you're afraid of security, the security is going to be better. Not that I care about that. So it's just the opposite of what most people think. It's like Gilda Radner said on Saturday Night Live. If it's not one thing, it's another thing. It's always some damn thing that people are afraid of. It's always something. So no, forget about this. This is hysteria that governments and the ruling classes, they want to keep everybody afraid. Because if people are afraid, then you need the government to defend you. So you're playing into their hands psychologically. It's idiotic.
We need to wrap up here and get ready for the next speaker. It's that Tigre guy. But we have one last question, and related to an earlier question, somebody asked, what to look for in a good mentor. Can you say what you think would be the criteria you would look for a good mentor, and how you make yourself attractive to possible mentors?
Well, a couple of people have asked me if I would be their mentor. And I said, sure, I'll help you any way I can. But, a good mentor is perhaps active, and, I wait. So I'm willing to be helpful any way I can, but I don't know how to be a mentor. Ask me a question. I'll give you my opinion. That opinion and $20 will get you a cup of coffee in Tokyo.
Adjusted for inflation.
I don't know how to help.
I can personally vouch for that. When I started at Casey Research, I didn't know anything about geology or finance. I didn't know what a warrant was. I had never traded a stock in my life. And the interesting thing was that you didn't take me on your knee and whisper in my ear and tell me how to do everything. You let me try, you let me make mistakes, but any question I had, you answered. And so just simply your willingness to be there for me was probably the main ingredient in my current success.
Thank you, Lobo. Well, that's all I could do, but I'm glad that I did that to a satisfactory level.
You've been very kind to share your time with us. It sounds like you need to go wet your whistle there some more, and I probably need to do the same and get ready for the next talk. I want to remind everybody that you do need to click on a fresh link. There's a link for each talk. You need to click on the one for my next talk, and I'll be back with you there. I want to remind everybody to check into our discussion forums on Liberty.me. We follow up there. If there are books that we talk about or ideas that we talk about, we can post things there. And Doug, thank you very much again for your time. It was great to speak with you again today.
Thanks, Lobo, and thanks to the audience for listening.
Okay, have a good one.
Thanks.